Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that is an absolute game changer for Chicago real estate, navigating building permits. Whether you're hunting for a new home, you're a massive DIY enthusiast, or honestly, you're just a bit curious about the history of your own property, knowing exactly how to dig up these records is a skill you definitely want in your back pocket.
I mean, have you ever walked past your neighbor's house and thought, wait, was that renovation actually legal? Or maybe you're touring one of those newly flipped properties in the city and you're wondering, did they seriously get the city's approval to just rip out that load-bearing wall? It happens all the time across Chicago's bungalow belts and two flat corridors, right? People just do the work without ever pulling a permit. But when that house hits the market, or when one of our massive Midwestern storms rolls through, man, that missing paperwork, it can turn into an absolute legal and financial nightmare.
Okay, so let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover why building permits matter, then preparing for your search, searching post-2006 records, navigating older historical permits, interpreting your search results, and finally, some tips and disclaimers.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Why Building Permits Matter.
So, look, this whole topic, it's about way more than just checking a box for municipal building codes. It is fundamentally about your financial protection. Experts call this the permit gap, and the consequences are pretty severe. Think about it. When a contractor skips a permit on, say, a full roof replacement, that work is never officially inspected for safety. So, if a storm hits and wrecks that unpermitted roof, your standard homeowner's insurance could literally just deny your entire claim. No way, right? And if you're the one selling the house, the stakes are even higher. Under the Illinois Residential Real Property Disclosure Act, sellers have to disclose known material defects, and yep, that includes unpermitted work. If a buyer figures this out after closing, they actually have a one-year rescission window to potentially unwind the whole transaction or sue for damages. In a market where a new roof can easily run you 30 grand, you really can't afford to mess this up.
Moving right along to Section 2, Preparing for your search.
All right, before we start clicking around in any city databases, we've got to gather some exact property details. And the absolute most crucial piece of the puzzle here is the property index number, or PIN. This is a unique 14-digit identifier that basically acts like a GPS coordinate, pointing straight to a parcel's location on the official Cook County tax maps. You absolutely need this number, especially if you're looking up properties out in unincorporated Cook County. If you don't know it off the top of your head, and let's be real, who does, you can easily look it up just by dropping the property address into the Cook County Assessor's website or the property tax portal.
Now, here's a massive pro tip that is going to save you a ton of bureaucratic headache. When you're using that Cook County portal to find your PIN, the system is, well, incredibly picky about formatting. You've got to leave out any directional indicators, so no north or south, and drop the street suffixes entirely. No street, avenue, or lane. Just plug in the core street name. Trust me, do this and you'll avoid throwing a bunch of annoying errors in their system.
Okay, Section 3, Searching Post-2006 Records.
So you've got your PIN and your address ready to go. Welcome to the modern era of Chicago permits, where things are actually digitized and mostly instant. The city relies on two main databases, and you kind of need to know the difference between them. First, there's the Inspection, Permitting, and Licensing Portal, usually just called the IPI portal. Think of this as the transaction hub. You use it for tracking active projects, applying for trade licenses, or searching across departments like the Department of Transportation. Then, on the flip side, we have the Socrata-backed Chicago Data Portal. This is your go-to for raw, bulk data. It is ridiculously detailed. We're talking full work descriptions, total fees paid, and even the applicant's self-reported estimated construction costs.
But hey, keep in mind that jurisdictional boundaries really matter here. If the property you're looking at is in unincorporated Cook County or out in the suburbs, the City of Chicago databases are going to be completely useless to you. For those, you have to use the specific Cook County Building Permit Status Search Portal. And heads up, for that system, you need both your 14-digit PIN and the specific county-assigned building permit application number.
Let's transition into Section 4, Navigating Older Historical Permits.
Now this is where things get a little spicy, because Chicago's records are, well, pretty fractured depending on the time period. Basically, the permits are split into three totally distinct chronological eras. We just talked about the modern digital era, from 2006 to today. But the middle chunk, from 1955 to 2005, that is known as the FOIA gap. It's this weird mid-century transitional period where you literally cannot just run a quick self-service digital search. And if you're looking for anything before 1955, you are completely in the realm of microfilm and old handwritten ledgers.
So how exactly do we bridge that FOIA gap between 55 and 2005? You're going to have to submit a formal Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Buildings. It sounds intimidating, but it's really not too bad. To get it done efficiently, just email the FOIA officer directly at dobfoia@cityofchicago.org. Or, if you prefer the old-school route, you can file it in person at City Hall, room 900. Just make absolutely sure you include a crystal-clear description of what you're looking for, the exact address range, and the specific dates you care about.
But what if you own one of those beautiful historic Chicago bungalows built way back in the 1920s? For anything pre-1955, you have to dig into historical ledgers that actually date all the way back to 1872. And here is some incredible news. The UIC Library recently digitized their entire collection of these microfilms, so you can actually access them online now. You can also still go view them in person on microfilm at the Chicago History Museum if you want that full historian experience. They even use this super helpful street index system so you can track down specific city blocks.
Watch out for this crazy historical curveball, though. If you're digging into property history from before the year 1909, beware. Chicago completely overhauled its street numbering system that year, and a lot of street names just straight up changed, too. So you're almost certainly going to need an address conversion guide to figure out your home's original address before you can even hope to find its oldest permits. Wild, right?
Okay, moving on to Section 5, Interpreting Your Search Results.
All right, let's say you did it. You navigated the databases, you tracked down the records, and you're staring at the permit. Honestly, finding it is only half the battle. Decoding all that bureaucratic jargon is a whole different ballgame. Here's exactly what you need to look for. Step 1, check the fees. If the system shows any unpaid building or zoning fees, that permit is legally invalid. Step 2, keep an eye out for any outstanding code violations attached to the address. The data has tons of real-world examples of this, where inspectors flag things like fractured exterior walls, spalling brick, or open-frame porches that weren't built to the approved plans. And finally, Step 3, you have to confirm that the permit actually hit the complete milestone.
Just to really drive that last point home, you are going to see a lot of statuses that say something like, permit issued, fee due. Make absolutely no mistake here. Physical construction work cannot legally start until every single one of those fees is settled. A permit that someone applied for but never actually paid for and never officially closed out with a complete status, that offers you absolutely zero legal protection.
And that brings us to Section 6, Final Tips and Disclaimers.
Let's wrap up with a few troubleshooting best practices for when the data is just refusing to cooperate. If you absolutely can't find a permit, double-check your jurisdictions. Are you definitely in the Chicago city limits, or are you actually in unincorporated Cook County? If municipal records are just nowhere to be found, you can actually use the Cook County Assessor's historical IS World data as a backup plan. Because permits trigger changes in tax values, the assessor's records can often help you verify mid-century construction timelines. Also, just keep in mind that those estimated construction costs you see in the data portals, those are self-reported by the applicants. The city doesn't audit them. So when in doubt, especially if you're in the middle of buying or selling a home, always consult a licensed real estate attorney.
And here is the ultimate golden rule. The city of Chicago actually has a brilliant disclaimer about this, and it basically boils down to this. Just because a permit was issued, it doesn't automatically mean the work was actually completed or that it was done up to code. On top of that, just because you don't see any violations listed online doesn't guarantee the property is perfectly in compliance today. These databases are just snapshots in time of what an inspector saw on one specific day years ago. You should always verify the current state of a property with professional, real-world inspections.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Armed with the IPI portal, FOIA requests, and a little bit of historical sleuthing, the power to uncover the truth is completely in your hands. So I'll leave you with this question. What hidden history, or maybe even hidden liabilities, might be resting right under your own roof as we speak? There's only one way to find out. Get out there, start searching, and we will see you in the next explainer.